Hey guys, what's up? So, I have some good news. I've become a father and I had a son. And in the other good news, I'm planning on starting YouTube again now that I've bought this XP pen, which allows me to do things like write on screen, which should make creating videos much easier than before. Because earlier I would have to record the audio separately, then find some video to put on the audio and make it interesting. And now I can just make the video while making the audio. So that makes things easier. So today's topic is the two lessons I learned about investing when I was very young, and I learned them very cheaply, but they are still very important lessons. So, two investing lessons I learned on the cheap. So back in 2013, I was about 17 years old and I had about $1,000 to my name. I think it was 900 something amount of money, right? It was like, let's go with $1,000. So, right, my net worth was $1,000. And this was everything I had made from all the little work that I had done at that age. And I had heard about the stock market. I was studying for my CA and I thought I knew how to invest in stocks, right? I was stupid, right? I'm going to say stupid. Or I should say inexperienced. Inexperienced. Okay. Right? I didn't know what I was doing, but I thought I could make money in the stock market and I was gonna go out and try. So I purchased shares in a stock called Walk Hard, right? All of the money I had, I invested this entire thing into this company. And this was back in 2013. And for guys who are familiar with the history of this company didn't do so well in 2013. And let me show you what happened to the company. Let me find a way to add the graph here. Okay, so let's see. So this is around where I invested. Me investing. Okay. And as you can see, this is what happened. It went down, right? It went down 20%, then went down 50%, and then by the end of it, it was down about 80%. And I was awake and watching the price go down the entire time, right? So when the stock went down by 20%, what did I do? Well, I did nothing, right? For me, it was like, ouch, the stock is down. But, my hopes were that the stock would recover and then I would sell it. So my mindset was it will recover and I'll exit. But that's not what happened, right? Then it went to 30%, minus 30%. And then it went down to minus 50%, right? I had lost half my investment. And my mindset was, I've already lost half my investment and I've stuck with this company for, minus 50%. Let's wait to see what would happen, right? So my mindset was, sunk cost, right? Cost, I'm too deeply invested. Basically, the thing was that I did not want to book a loss. I really didn't want to do that, right? I was too young and booking a loss feels really bad. So I didn't want to book losses. Book a loss, okay? So I just held on to the stock hoping that it would recover. And then it went here. It went to minus 80%, right? At this point, I was panicking. I had lost 80% of my net worth at 17 years old. And, you know, it was just stupid, right? I had kept holding on to the stock and it was at minus 80%. And at this point, I decided to sell. So I sold. And to be honest, right, when it was at minus 20%, I kind of knew that it would keep tanking. And when it was at minus 30% somewhere here, I knew it would tank. But I was just too much of a chicken to sell, right? I didn't want to sell. I wanted it to recover so I could exit and so that I would not lose my principal. But what ended up happening is that the stock kept crashing and crashing and crashing. And I sold, at the time where I just had lost hope, this is not going to go anywhere. And I sold all my stake in this company and I lost all my money. I mean, 80% of it. So this taught me two really valuable lessons that have stuck with me to this date and kind of guide me when I'm investing. I'm going to give you those lessons, but first I need to figure out how to add a new page. Okay, so I figured out how to add a new page. So what are the two lessons I learned? So lesson one is diversification. I had invested 80% of my net worth in one company. And that's a really, really dumb thing to do. Because anything can happen to an individual stock, right? Anything can happen to an individual stock. What do I mean by this, okay? Well, founder can die. The guy who's running the company, the guy who owns the company, he can get hit by a bus. And then suddenly your investment is worth very little. Well, the product they're selling can get banned. For example, right? Donald Trump comes out tomorrow and says, I am banning all products by Apple because it is not manufacturing in America. And then he bans the iPhone from being sold anywhere in the world, right? And he says, if you sell the iPhone, we're going to put your employees in jail or what have you. And the product gets banned. What would happen to the net worth of Apple? It would tank. I mean, this is like a very far-fetched example, but there are many companies who have products, who have one main product that could definitely get banned. So that's another risk you're taking. Well, there can be supply chain issues. For example, a friend of mine, what he does is he imports something from China and he sells it all the way in the US. And his margin is about 20%. But recently, Trump put 40% tariff on his product. And he was telling me for the last 3 months, he has just been sitting at home and doing nothing because when your margin is 20%, you can't afford to pay tariffs. Like you can't afford to pay 40% tariffs. It just doesn't work. So he's just trying to wait out Donald Trump. And that's another issue, right? Like you invest in a stock and there are supply chain issues of some kind. It could be like, the product, there's some raw material, the price is increased, or it's just not available, or the shipping is not available, or the tariff problem, whatever. You're not able to get product from the place you're manufacturing it into the hands of the consumer. And then there is problems with the stock's value. Then another thing that happens all the time, at least in third world countries, are accounting scandals. So all of these things, right? This is not like a complete list. This is like an inclusive list. There are hundreds of more items, Basically, anything can happen to an individual stock. An individual stock is like extremely, well, if you're investing in only one stock, you're taking a big amount of risk for the most part. There are exceptions, like you invest in Apple is less risky than investing in some, small company. But overall, there is a lot of value to diversification. And the general rule is not more than 10% in one company and not more than 20% in one industry. But at the same time, right, you have to use your brains, and you have to understand when you're broke, you might have to concentrate your investments and not follow these rules because you need to build wealth. These rules are meant for people who want to preserve wealth. But at the same time, you should have some amount of diversification, right? If you take all your money and you put it in one thing, it's not exactly the smartest move you can make. And, you would be like my stupid 17-year-old self, and you might end up losing 80% of your money, right? What is the second lesson that I learned? Okay. The second lesson, let's go and write again. Okay. Lesson number 2. The second lesson is do not fall for the sunk cost fallacy. So do not fall for the sunk cost fallacy. And what is a sunk cost fallacy? Well, to put it in one line, it goes something like this. I've already lost so much. I can hold on a little bit longer. It basically means that you've lost enough money that it kind of makes you afraid to quit, But the reality is that you've already lost the money that you've lost, right? Don't lose more. Don't lose more. Cut your losses. Right? In the example here, right, the one I showed you, what should I have done? Okay, it went minus 20%. I think it would go down more. Well, I should have cut my losses. I should have cut my losses right here. Right here, I should have been like, I should have sold. But I didn't. Why did I sell? Because I was stupid. I did not know about sunk cost. You have to understand that just because you lost 20% doesn't mean you can't lose another 30%, another 40%, another 50%, right? You've already lost whatever money you've lost, and now you have to make sure that you don't lose more, or at the very least, you have to make sure that when you're invested, you're aware of the risks you're taking, and that it still makes sense to stay invested in that company, right? Just because you screwed up once doesn't mean you have to keep screwing up. So don't go by this thing where, I've already gone through a minus 30%, and now I can't, I can't book the loss, and I have to keep on holding the stock until it recovers. Don't do that to yourself. It's a mistake, right? Regret is a wasted emotion. Regret equal to wasted emotion, okay? Regret is a wasted emotion. Learn to cut your losses so that you don't lose even more money. Right? This whole sunk cost fallacy is something that's in your DNA, but you have to make sure that you you are smarter than your DNA. Okay, don't repeat this mistake, or you will lose a lot of money. If a ship is sinking, abandon that ship. Do not hold on to it just because I've been on this ship for 10 years. I'm gonna go down with it. Don't go down with the ship. Pick a different ship. Okay. And finally, I'm gonna leave you with one message. Okay. Learn. I'm gonna write with red. Pink is a little girly. Okay. Learn now from this video. Or learn by losing your money. And this is something I tell to all of my clients when I see them make this mistake. I tell them, okay, learn this lesson now, that you should diversify and that you should not fall for the sunk cost fallacy. Learn it now when I'm telling you, rather than learning it after you lose like half or 80% or 90% of your money, right? And I know if you're watching this, you're probably a guy, and men like making risky investment. Men equal to they like making risky investments. And I know this for a fact. Like, you're not gonna call me sexist. If you want to call me sexist, that's fine. I don't care. But I've been in the tax and law consulting business for 12 years now, and I've dealt with thousands of clients, just people like you. And I know this for a fact. Men do dumb, risky investments. They take all their money and put it in one stock. They see the stock going down and they don't sell. And they end up losing minus 80%, minus 90%. I've even seen a guy who lost minus 90% twice. So he lost 99%. And it's a different story that I would go into maybe in a different video. But what the guy did was he went from one scam coin, on crypto, to another scam coin on crypto, and lost like 90% both times. So he was left with nothing. So don't do this nonsense. Be smart. Use something called a stop loss. And what happens here is that the stock is automatically sold after a certain threshold is hit. So for example, if the stock does minus 20%, it is automatically sold from your portfolio. Use a stop loss. Use a stop loss. I'm telling you this. This is me with over 12 years of experience with this thing, consulting clients, investing in my own portfolio. I have a degree in accounting and auditing. This is a guy telling you the simplest thing you can do is to use a stop loss. So use a stop loss. And that's enough for this video. And I think I'm going to continue making one video per week. So go ahead and subscribe. Right, I need to get used to writing on this thing. And like the video, whatever, have fun. And I'll see you next week.